Today I shall talk about India's turnaround story. If you look back in history, civilization has always recorded the rise and fall of nations. But the rise and fall of nations do not merely follow the tide of time. Like ships, they are anchored in their leadership. They are anchored in their strength. And in India's case, a country that has witnessed a transformative journey in the last decade under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, a country that has today graduated from being Asia-Pacific to Indo-Pacific, that tells the story of India's arrival, the story of India's rise. But as we talk about India's rise and India's arrival, what are the levers behind this transformative change? What are the levers behind the emergence today as a global power? And as they always say, the engine of the ship is always the captainship. And under Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji, the direction that this ship has been given, the routing that this ship has been given, taking it to newfound destinations and newfound heights. Suffice to say, it has been a 180-degree turn. Prior to 2014, the 60-year-old socialist straitjacket has been thrown off. Myopic policies that restrained the growth of a great country, myopic policies that were tailored for sustenance, have been eradicated, and a new growth policy, a new growth lever has been instituted. Growth policies and growth levers based on the concept of Atmanirbhar Bharat, self-reliant India.
Ein Indien,
And that
das
policy,
sich selbst gerecht wird.
under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji, over the last decade, has resulted in a country that is far more confident, a country that is far more consequential as an economy, and a country that is marching down the path of progress at light speed. And when we talk about the concept of speed, what is speed? But the amount of distance covered in a period of time. And when we talk about distance, today Indian products, Indian companies, the Indian brand, there is not a single country across this world where Indian products or Indian brands are not known, where Indian products and Indian brands have etched their quality and their capability. Indian supply chains today extend to every continent across the globe. And India today has become the go-to destination for every multinational, every rising company, and every startup. Because in today's globe, irrespective of the point of time in your journey as a company, every company has to be global. And suffice to say that any global strategy cannot be even contemplated about without the core of that global strategy being centered around Bharat Mata, being centered around India. And if you look at the change, citing one example, the ubiquitous part of our lives, the mobile phone, which is a ministry that now I am in charge of. Apple came to India to manufacture mobile phones in the year 2021. They had a turnover of $1.6 billion. Today, 3 years down the road, Apple's turnover from manufacturing iPhones in India, the only country where it has manufactured phones outside China, is $8.1 billion. Over a 5-fold increase in a period of 3.5 years. That is the transformative change that we are talking about. And similarly, when we talk about time, it would not be a hyperbole to say that India has condensed growth of over decades into one golden decade, quote unquote, being the golden ball session. One golden decade where in 60 years in India, you had 90,000 kilometers of national highways. Today, you have 150,000 kilometers of national highways. 60,000 kilometers built only in one decade. In a country like India, where you had 74 airports built over a period of 60 years, today you have 160 airports. That's an additional 85 airports in a period of 10 years. In India today, where you had broadband users up till 2014, only 60 million broadband users. In that same country today, you have 924 million broadband users, where the consumption of data was limited to 1 GB per person on a monthly basis. Today, that consumption of data has gone to 20 Gbps per person. Those are the numbers that we are talking about in India today. And similarly, a country that was the 11th largest economy in 2014, today at close to $4 trillion, has become the 5th largest economy. And by 2027, we will become the 3rd largest economy in the world. On foreign exchange reserves, a country that had close to $304 billion today has $684 billion in terms of reserves. In terms of exports, a country that had $446 billion worth of exports today has $777 billion worth of exports. And therefore, India, ladies and gentlemen, has transformed itself, is transforming itself, both at scale and at speed. And we are poised to create a new economic miracle, not only across South Asia, not only across the global South, but across the length and breadth of humanity. Now, this progress that we talk about today under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi is not only about numbers. It's about the ability to transform lives. It is about our targeted welfare measures that have changed the lives of our citizens, from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, from Bharuch till Arunachal Pradesh. And this empowerment of our people has transformed our continent from its roots to be able to compete in a globalized world. In 60 years of our independence, we had built 30 million houses for the poor. In the last 10 years, we have built an additional 30 million houses, and we have now said, in the next 5 years, we will build another 30 million houses, ensuring 100% saturation of a roof over every single citizen's head in India within the next 5 years. Similar is our case with regard to toilets. In the last 10 years, we have built 120 million toilets across the length and breadth of our country. Not a single person in India, in any village across the length and breadth of our country, 650,000 villages, is without the dignity of being able to use their own facilities. Our largest healthcare program, the largest healthcare program today in the world, a universal coverage of close to about $6,000 on an annual basis for every single citizen below the poverty line, covering today 30 million citizens across the length and breadth of our country, and adding on every single person above the age of 70 years, taking that number from 30 million to 36 million. And similarly, every single woman across the length and breadth of our country will move from using wood to cook their food to gas cylinders and gas stoves. In the last 10 years, 100 million women through the Ujjwala Yojana have been empowered with free gas stoves and free gas cylinders. When COVID came along, and many across the world were left without jobs, left without food to eat, under Prime Minister Modi's leadership, we committed ourselves that not a single citizen in India will go to sleep on an empty stomach. We instituted a food program for 800 million people across the length and breadth of our country. And that's why we use the refrain that India is moving both at scale and at speed. And all of this, ladies and gentlemen, all of this at the click of a button. India's economy, India's welfare programs have all been moved onto the digital system. And if I were to give you a perspective of the magnitude of the task that we have undertaken, today with our DPI network, digital public infrastructure, our UPI network, United Payment Interface, which our Minister of Communications in Germany has used when he visited India last time to buy chilies. A system today that has 16 billion transactions in a single month. 16 billion transactions in a single month, comprising of $272 billion, which means $3.2 trillion a year. So yes, we have a national metalled highway, but along with that national metalled highway of 150,000 kilometers, we also have a digital highway. And that digital highway has been the leveler, providing opportunity to every single citizen across the length and breadth of India. And so digitalization is no longer a challenge for India. Digitization is now a leveler of growth. And it is a lever of growth. For the people, of the people, by the people. And as India progresses down that highway, in the last 10 years, 250 million people have been lifted above the poverty line. This is probably the largest turnaround that history has documented in any economy across the world. And as we move from the core to the periphery, and when we talk about the periphery in growth mode under Prime Minister Narendra Modi, we are talking about India's innovative capability, India's soft power capability. India historically has always been a land of invention. We invented the zero. We gave the world yoga. We gave the world Ayurveda. Surgery was invented in India. But now India moves from invention to being a cradle of innovation. And when India moves from being a cradle of invention to innovation, it reminds me of the movie Star Trek, where Captain Kirk's dialogue, "Where no man has gone before." India's Mars mission, ladies and gentlemen, a successful mission, was executed at 11% of the budget of NASA. India's mission to the moon, the first country in the world to land on the south pole of the moon with Vikram lander. And that's why we say in India, प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी ने भारत के झंडे को भारत की धरती पर नहीं, विश्व पटल पर नहीं, लेकिन चांद पे भी गाड़ के रख दिया है. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has raised India's flag within India's firmament. He has raised India's flag on the global firmament, but he has also planted India's flag on the moon. That, ladies and gentlemen, whether we talk about India's adventure into space or in my own portfolio, the Prime Minister made the decision that our state-owned telecom company, BSNL, will move down the technology curve. But we shall not be dependent on international telecom equipment manufacturers. We will manufacture our own 4G stack. And it has taken us only 19 months to manufacture our own 4G stack, our own 4G core, manufactured by CDOT, a government company, Our radio access networks, manufactured by an Indian private sector company, Tejas, and both of them being put together by our own Indian system integrator, Tata Consultancy Services. An end-to-end Indian solution. We are rolling it out as we speak. 50,000 towers have been rolled out, 100,000 towers by next June, on which the 5G network will also be laid. The Indian stack 5G network will be laid, the only fifth country in the world to successfully do so in a record period of time. When COVID came along, and India, a country through history that has always gone to international countries and begged and pleaded and tried to secure international vaccines, whether it is smallpox, BCG. In an environment of COVID, we manufactured not only one, but two vaccines. Inoculated 2 billion shots across our 1.4 billion population. But not only that, but exported our domestic vaccines to 100 countries across the world. India believes in not only India first, India believes in humanity first. And that is India's ethos, ladies and gentlemen. So while I was talking about telecom, let me assure this august audience here that we followed the world on 4G. We marched with the world on 5G. But we shall lead the world in 6G. Our Bharat 6G Alliance will contribute over 10% of the patents in the new 6G rule-making network. But whilst we say all this, we also look at the entrepreneurial energy of India. A country in which Prime Minister Narendra Modi started up the Startup India initiative. We had just but a few startups that we could count on our fingertips in 2014. Today, with the democratization of technology, the democratization of opportunity, the democratization of progress, we have over 140,000 startups in India. 117 unicorns. For every 10 unicorns in the world, one is based from India. So India is the cradle of innovation, the cradle of invention, and the cradle of entrepreneurial opportunity. But as we move ahead, India's strategy is to grow, but to grow with the world alongside it. And the G20 was a beautiful exposition of the Indian brand of leadership, where we advocated an ethical and inclusive policy of growth so that the global south does not get left behind, where 1/3 of humanity lies, tied very much with the Prime Minister's ethos of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, Sabka Vishwas, and Sabka Prayas. All-round communication and cooperation, all-round development, all-round effort, and all-round trust. And it is with that notion that today India participates in international narratives, whether it's the Quad, whether it's the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, whether it is international initiatives, such as the International Solar Alliance, the One Sun, One Earth, One Grid philosophy. And while India embarks on this policy, it is also important to understand that India's thought process is to ensure that every country, great or small, participates in humanity's progress. So while India moves ahead, India has also transformed herself from being a rule taker to a rule maker. An ability to create her own future, an ability to create her own destiny. And while she does that, she will move from a policy of being Vishwa par Nirbhar, dependent on the world, to being Atmanirbhar, self-reliant. From being Atmanirbhar, self-reliant, to Vishwa Bharat par Nirbhar. The world depends and trusts India. The Prime Minister's thought of reform, perform, and transform. Everyone grows as India grows. And as they say, no one can whistle a symphony. It takes a whole orchestra to play it. So, ladies and gentlemen, as India moves and embarks on a journey from her Amrit Kal to her Shatabdi Kal, from her 75th year of independence to her 100th year of independence, she needs to poise herself for a new dawn and a new age where there is collective growth and shared triumph. And on this stage, I invite all of you to come be a part of that transformative journey.